Hello everyone, welcome if it's the first time you come to my channel, and thank you for clicking on this fairly strange title that I gave to this video. This is an idea I had because, being Italian, I very often go on Italian book websites or bookstores online and to browse. I go there, browse, and sometimes I even order some Italian books to be shipped to the US. In this case, I'm going to show you some screens from a website called IBS, Internet Bookshop.it. So it's Internet Bookshop Italia. And I want to show you the 20 bestsellers that are non-Italian titles. They could be German, English, French, from Asia, from anywhere else, but not Italian. And all of them have been translated into English. So if there's a title that somehow catches your attention, you can find it online or in the US market or in the UK market. Okay, so let's start from the top one, from number one. The top bestseller non-Italian author in Italy in these days, which is January 2023, is Joel Dicker, who is a Swiss author from Switzerland. And this particular book has been translated in English with the title The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair. It is clearly a crime fiction novel. It's based in New Hampshire. What happens, just as a touch on the plot, in 1999 they find the body of a woman in a lake, and they quickly close the case because the police received a confession, and the guy who confesses to this murder basically commits suicide. Now, 11 years later, this case gets opened up again. So it's really the story of a cold case, as we can call it. At number two, we have Violeta. This is a novel by the Chilean writer Isabel Allende, very famous Chilean writer. It's a sweeping novel. It's a family novel. This one I have not read, and it's really the story of this woman, Violeta del Valle, a woman whose life spans 100 years, and she basically tells her own biography, her own story, fictional story, of course, from the point of view of 2020, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, her own life that in fact started in 1920. So it's very interesting how her life would be marked by all the most important events of the 20th century. Violeta tells her story in the form of a letter to someone that she loves very much, and she recounts all the heartbreak and her affairs, all the times of poverty and also wealth, of loss and joy. It sounds like a very, very broad novel, and it should be enjoyable if you like this, if you enjoy this author. At number three, we have Fresh Water for Flowers by Valérie Perrin. She is a French author, and this novel is talking about a character named Violette Toussaint. She's the caretaker at a cemetery in a small town near Bourgogne in France. She has visitors and colleagues, and everybody visits her very often in her lodge. She has a lodge there. Her daily life is very normal, a very kind of normal paced life, until it's disrupted one day by the arrival of a mysterious man, Julien Saul, who is the local police chief, who is insisting on depositing the ashes of his recently departed mother on the gravesite of a complete stranger. It's a little bit of a mystery, but at the same time, really the focus of this novel is on the mundane and exceptional at the same time, and many reviewers found this a very, very poetic novel. This was a number one bestseller in France, by the way. At number four, we have the uber famous book The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And if you have been alive in the last couple of years, you cannot have missed Madeline Miller's work. So I am not gonna really delve much into this book, Song of Achilles recreates some of the Greek myths in a very dynamic, in a very realistic way. And just as this book has been so successful in the US, apparently it's very successful in Italy as well. The fifth title is a big classic from Russia. This is Vasily Grossman Stalingrad, which is the first part of a huge two-part work called Life and Fate, which was published in 1952. Grossman wanted to call this earlier book out of the two Stalingrad, and this is how it's been called in the English translation, I believe. But initially in English it was published as For a Just Cause. So it's interesting to find it at number 5 in the foreign bestsellers from the point of view of the Italian market. At number 6 we have another book that's been selling like bread all over the solar system, from Mars to Mercury, etc., and that you've probably already seen. In fact, I've been growing a little bit tired to see this face of this guy on the cover, who looks like either something has fallen very heavily on his toes, or he's been sprayed on in the face with lemon. Something has happened to him, but it's just not my favorite cover. Let's just say that. A Little Life by Hanya Yagihara is the story of 4 classmates, their lives, and their differences. It's been an enormously successful book in the Anglo-Saxon world, in the market, and apparently it's being read very much in Italy as well. We move to number 7. We have Japanese Satoshi Yakisawa with this book that in English is titled Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, and it sounds like this book, which I have not read, is a very intriguing book because it revolves around a bookstore owned by the protagonist's uncle in a place called Jibocho. Despite the initial lack of interest in novels of the protagonist called Takako, she is slowly drawn into the world of books as she comes into contact with the unusual customers who frequent this bookstore. At number 8 we have another book by Madeline Miller, and this is another book that you probably have heard about, you've seen it everywhere, so I'm not going to really describe it much. This is Circe by Madeline Miller. It's the life of a lesser god, and as the daughter of the mighty god Helios, the leading embodiment of the sun, she is born without any particular talents, and she exists in the shadows of her more powerful brothers and sisters. This is a book that I've heard around YouTube, around Goodreads, etc., that some people absolutely loved with all their hearts, and some other people found a little too superficial. But I haven't read it, so I don't know where I would stand, but it's an intriguing title for me as well. I think I would like to pick it up. At number 9 we have this Mascella di Caino in Italian, which translates in English as Cain's Jawbone by Torquemada, who is really a Poe's Mothers. This is an interesting book because it's not recent. In fact, it was published in 1934 and in England. And this novel was released not just as a novel, but more as a murder mystery. And so it was a very famous, in those years, it was a very famous literary puzzle. Somebody considers it the most difficult literary puzzle ever written, and not many people have been able to untangle this or resolve this puzzle. So I think there's a game behind this, and in many reviews people say, please note, this puzzle is extremely difficult and not for the faint-hearted. At number 10 we have another Japanese title. Interesting to see so many Japanese titles being sold and making it to the bestseller list in Italy. The author this time is Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and the title, translated in English, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is interesting because it has to do a little bit with time travel. In a small back alley in Tokyo, there is a cafe which can serve carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years, but this coffee shop also offers a unique experience, which is the chance to travel back in time. It's an interesting, it sounds like a light-hearted read, but something that I would probably very much enjoy. Very interestingly, we have the sequel to this first Toshikatsu Kawaguchi title. So this sequel is titled Until the Coffee is Hot, and it basically continues with stories revolving around this cafe, this bar that allows people to travel in time, and it must be interesting to follow their adventures. At number 12, we have The Murders at Fleet House by Lucinda Riley. This is a crime fiction novel, and Lucinda Riley sadly passed away in June 2021. She was a really beloved crime fiction writer, and I think in Italy she sold a lot of her books. This particular book sounds very suspenseful, starts with the sudden death of a pupil in Fleet House, St. Stephen's, which is a small private boarding school in Norfolk, and all the consequences of this event. Many reviewers said that it's an unsettling story, very tense mystery. For number 13, we go to Portugal with the Portuguese author José Saramago, very famous author, who's been, this particular book in fact is called Blindness, and there is a great channel, if you don't know it yet, called Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse, where Noah has been speaking about José Saramago, in fact more than once, in case you want to go a little bit deeper into Blindness, but I think other novels by José Saramago. This Portuguese author, very loved all around the world. He has his fame is really global, so it's not surprising to find him here in this Italian bestseller list. I've read a couple of his books. I know that he was an outspoken atheist, and many of his books reflect this worldview. At number 14, we have a book titled 3 by Valérie Perrine, who is an author that we already seen in this list. She's a French author. She seems to be selling very well in Italy, and this is another interesting mystery novel based in between 1986 and 2017 in France. It's about 3 friends who meet at school when they are only 10 years old and quickly become inseparable. And of course, some tragedy will follow, but it will be interesting to see exactly what kind of tragedy. Then at number 15, we have a very, very interesting French author. I'm not sure if my US friends or English friends, probably the English friends, have heard about Michel Houellebecq a little bit more than what the US market has heard, but by now he's become a really big name in the international book world, and he is a very outspoken author. He's been controversial several times. I've read a couple of his books, and I found them to be very, very clever. Some of them are excessive, so very, let's say, intense. And this particular book is called Annientare in Italian, which means annihilation. It's based in France, and it revolves around French politics. French politics during a fictional cyber attack that hits the French government and a particular French politician. I expect this book to be extremely intriguing, and again, I really like this author. He has a very broad range. At number 16, we have another world-renowned title, which is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. And I hope that you know the Beatles song Norwegian Wood, which is something that the book has a little bit marginally to do with, at least. And I have not read this particular book, but I know that so many people love it. Number 17 is Folia or Folly by Patrick McGrath. This book has been published in the English-speaking world with the title of Asylum. And it talks about psychiatry and a maximum security hospital in 1959, where Stella Raphael joins her psychiatrist husband Max in this hospital for the criminally insane, and she soon falls under the spell of a sculptor who is being confined to the hospital for murdering his wife. Now, the book itself has received a lot of praise. It has an average of 4 stars on Goodreads. I don't know if that means that it's particularly good or not, but I've read great reviews from Italian reviewers as well. So it sounds like it would be one to check out. At number 18, we have the latest Stephen King called Fairy Tale. And someone once told me how much the marketing campaigns of big names like Stephen King actually cost to the whole Stephen King industry, let's say. And it's really in the high millions of dollars, really some numbers that even if you're an Italian reader and you walk into a bookstore, you will find that specific cardboard tower with the copies of Fairy Tale that distinguishes it from everything else and tells you this is a book to buy, you have to buy it. So I don't know if it's good. I read some reviews that are a little bit mixed. Somebody really liked it, somebody didn't. I don't think I'm gonna read this one. Number 19 is La Quarta Profezia, or The Fourth Prophecy by Glenn Cooper. Now, reading the reviews both in English and in Italian of this book, I understand that this is a dud. This is not a good book. So in case you're thinking of approaching this book or maybe even buying it, my suggestion would be probably no, don't do it, based on the various reviews that I've read. And finally, we get to the last one, number 20, which is once again the French author Valérie Perrine, Il quaderno dell'amore perduto, or in English, The Notebook of the Lost Love. Once again, we find ourselves in a small little village of 500 people in the heart of France. There we have Justine, who is the female protagonist. She has a fairly safe job as an assistant in an elderly home, and she gets to know a woman called Hélène. Hélène tells Justine her own story, the story of her great love, and goes back to the story of the Second World War. And for Justine, it becomes more and more important to save those memories, Hélène's memories, and this becomes, in a sense, her own mission. This is why she uses this blue notebook where she notes down Hélène's life. It sounds like this could be a very beautiful, delicate novel from the female point of view. That's it. This is the list. Thank you for watching and for listening. And let me know if any of these 20 titles has caught your attention, either positively or negatively. And for now, have a great week. Bye. Thank you.